Deep in the heart of the forest, far removed from the relentless noise and convenience of modern society, one man sets out to challenge the wilderness. His mission is deceptively simple yet monumental: to build a winterproof permanent stone cabin using nothing but hand tools, raw forest materials, and his own physical endurance. Accompanied only by his 2 dogs, he must race against the seasons. The goal is to establish a secure homestead in the wild before the unforgiving autumn rains arrive and turn the forest floor into a freezing quagmire. Every great structure begins with a strategic decision, and for Bogdan that decision is the location. He deliberately passes over the flat, seemingly convenient valley bottom, choosing instead a sloped hillside. In the wilderness, water is both a lifesaver and a destroyer. When the heavy winter snows eventually melt, a valley bottom becomes a swamp. By building on a slope, Bogdan ensures that gravity works in his favor, directing water away from his structure and letting it run harmlessly downhill. However, a sloped site presents an immediate structural engineering challenge. Stacking hundreds of heavy fieldstones onto the soft, organic forest floor is like building a castle on a sponge. Over time, the weight would cause the structure to shift, tilt, and crack. To prevent this catastrophic failure, Bogdan must engage in grueling manual labor. He digs down past the soft loam, through the roots and decaying matter, until he strikes the hard, compacted mineral earth. This solid subsoil will serve as an unyielding foundation. With the perimeter finally cleared and leveled, he faces the next staggering hurdle: gathering roughly 800 massive fieldstones from the surrounding woods, one grueling load at a time. To transform a pile of scattered stones into a monolithic, weather-resistant fortress, Bogdan requires a binding agent. In the wild, there are no bags of commercial cement. Instead, he must manufacture his own mortar from the earth beneath his feet. Regular forest dirt is completely unsuitable. It is filled with decomposing leaves, twigs, and small pebbles that introduce air pockets and weaken the structural bond. To solve this, Bogdan constructs a simple but highly effective screening tool. By sifting the raw soil through a fine mesh, he isolates the pure, fine clay and silt particles. When mixed precisely with water, this refined earth undergoes a transformation, curring into a dense, rock-solid primitive cement. With his mortar prepared, the masonry work begins. The strength of a stone building relies heavily on its corners. If the corners fail, the entire structure collapses outward. Bogdan spends hours searching for specific large, flat-faced stones. These are his structural pillars. By interlocking these heavy geometric boulders at the corners, he creates a rigid skeletal frame for the cabin. As he lays the stones, he introduces another brilliant defensive detail against the elements. Using a dry twig brush, he aggressively scores and cleans the mortar joints while they are still damp. This process, known in modern masonry as pointing, ensures that the mortar is recessed slightly behind the stone faces. When the torrential autumn rains lash against the cabin, the water will not pool on the flat mortar joints and seep into the interior. Instead, it will hit the smooth, exposed stone and slide harmlessly down the exterior wall. As the walls steadily rise, the sheer physical reality of the build changes dramatically. In the beginning, moving stones was a matter of simple legwork and a strong back. But as the structure surpasses chest height, brute force is no longer a viable strategy. Lifting an irregular, slippery boulder weighing hundreds of pounds over your head while maintaining balance on uneven ground is a recipe for disaster. Bogdan reaches a critical bottleneck. He must elevate stones weighing up to 700 pounds with absolute precision, or the project will grind to a halt. Forced to innovate, Bogdan turns to ancient mechanical principles. He looks to the surrounding forest not just as a source of raw materials but as an active component of his engineering. Utilizing 2 living trees as permanent, unyielding structural anchors, he constructs a primitive mechanical crane, reminiscent of an ancient shaduf. The system relies entirely on the physics of leverage and counterweights. By packing a heavy canvas sack with smaller, manageable rocks on one end of a long lever arm, he offsets the crushing weight of the massive boulders on the other. This simple apparatus completely transforms the ergonomics of the build. What was once a backbreaking, dangerous chore becomes a controlled, elegant process. With minimal physical exertion, Bogdan can now hoist monumental stones high into the air, hovering them over the wall with the precision needed to drop them perfectly into place without disrupting the alignment of the lower tiers. Stone cabin in a northern forest is an incredible shield against the wind, but without an efficient way to manage heat, it can easily become a freezing tomb in the dead of winter. Bogdan isn't just building a shelter, he's integrating a brilliant historical Slavic heating architecture known traditionally as a patch or a thermal mass stove. In a standard modern fireplace, the vast majority of the heat generated by the fire escapes straight up the vertical chimney stack, wasting precious fuel. Bogdan's system is vastly more sophisticated. He constructs a long, horizontal masonry labyrinth across the floor. When a fire is lit, the The hot exhaust gases and smoke are forced to travel horizontally through this stone tunnel before they are allowed to exit through the chimney. As the superheated air journeys through this path, the massive thermal bulk of the surrounding stone absorbs the heat energy. Bogdan plans to build his elevated sleeping platform directly on top of this horizontal masonry flue. Throughout the night, long after the active fire has died down to cold ashes, the dense stones will slowly, continuously radiate that stored warmth upward, keeping his bed and the cabin interior cozy for hours on end. As the masonry work continues around the window openings, Bogdan encounters another architectural challenge. Creating a self-supporting structural arch out of irregular stones requires immense time, complex wooden formwork, and perfectly keystone-cut rocks. To bypass this tedious process without sacrificing structural integrity, Bogdan looks to nature's pre-existing geometry. He hunts through the forest until he locates a fallen hardwood tree with a perfect, naturally grown sweep. This is known historically as compass timber. Nature has already spent decades aligning the wood fibers into a perfect, unbroken curve of immense strength. By salvaging this piece, Bogdan gets an instant structural archway that can easily bear the immense weight of the stone wall above it. Blending organic form with pure function. With the stone walls finally reaching their full height, Bogdan shifts his focus from masonry to heavy carpentry. He needs a central vertical column to support the immense weight of the upcoming roof structure. However, placing raw, untreated timber directly into or near the damp earth is a death sentence for a cabin. Soil moisture and microbes will rot the core of the wood within a few short seasons. To defeat this invisible enemy, Bogdan employs an ancient Japanese preservation philosophy known as *yakasugi or timber charring. By deliberately exposing the exterior of the log to intense fire, he alters the chemical structure of the wood. The process burns away the soft, cellular sugars that insects and fungi feed on, leaving behind a highly stable, blackened layer of pure carbon. This carbon skin acts as a natural, highly effective barrier that repels moisture, resists rot, and deters wood-boring pests. The dedication to longevity is further reflected in Bogdan's total ban on iron nails and metal fasteners. In a humid, dense forest environment, hidden metal nails inevitably sweat, rust, and react with the natural acids in the wood. Over the decades, this process causes the wood surrounding the nail to degrade and loosen, structurally compromising the building. Instead, Bogdan commits to the timeless art of traditional timber framing using mortise and tenon joinery. The interlocking wooden joints are permanently locked into place using hand-carved wooden pegs, often referred to as tree nails. This method creates a dynamic living structure. Because the pegs and the structural beams are made of the same organic material, they move in perfect harmony. As the heavy green timber seasons, dries, and shrinks over the coming years, the joints do not loosen. Instead, they warp slightly around each other, clamping down with immense force, making the connections significantly tighter and stronger as the cabin ages. The roof is a cabin's primary shield against the relentless physics of the atmosphere. To make his shelter completely impervious to both the biting winter cold and the driving rains, Bogdan engineers a sophisticated multi-layered primitive roof system. The first layer consists of a massive volume of completely dry forest grass. When packed tightly, this fibrous mass traps millions of tiny pockets of still air. In thermodynamics, trapped air is one of the finest natural insulators available, drastically slowing down the escape of internal heat. However, loose grass would easily blow away in a storm or soak through like a sponge. To secure and waterproof this insulation, Bogdan applies a thick, heavy layer of dense mud directly over the top. The immense weight of the mud compresses the loose grass into a dense, interlocking mat. As the mud dries, it cures into an airtight, solid protective blanket. This hybrid system combines the high thermal resistance of organic insulation with the heavy weatherproofing mass of the earth. With the top of the cabin sealed, Bogdan turns his attention downward. Leaving the interior floor as bare earth is a critical flaw. During a prolonged rainy season, moisture will inevitably wick up from the ground, turning the interior into a damp, muddy mess that ruins gear and breeds mold. Bogdan finds his solution in a nearby creek bed, harvesting slate. Slate is a metamorphic rock formed under immense geological pressure, giving it a unique natural property. It cleaves beautifully along parallel planes into remarkably flat, durable sheets. Bogdan prepares the interior floor with a bedding layer of damp, pliable clay. He meticulously fits the slate tiles into place, creating an incredibly durable, easy-to-clean floor that completely isolates the living space from the damp ground beneath. He extends this stonework to construct an elevated kitchen counter. This provides a completely fireproof, stable workstation where he can set boiling pots and red-hot cast iron cookware directly down without any risk of scorching his living space. With the structural envelope completely sealed and secure against the elements, Bogdan can finally transition from basic survival architecture to the finer details of wilderness comfort. He begins crafting furniture, starting with simple, functional stools for his hearth. His choice of design is a deliberate piece of rural ergonomics. He builds three-legged stools. On a hand-laid, irregular stone floor, a traditional four-legged chair will almost always wobble, as it requires four perfectly level points of contact. A three-legged stool, however, is a geometric certainty. 3 points will always find a stable plane on any surface, no matter how uneven, ensuring a solid, wobble-free seat every time. Outside the cabin, Bogdan constructs a large, deep wooden bench placed directly against the southern stone wall. This layout is a brilliant utilization of passive solar design. Throughout the clear autumn days, the massive dark fieldstone walls act as a thermal battery, absorbing the intense energy of the sun's rays. When the sun sets and the air temperature plummets, the masonry begins to slowly release that stored heat back out into the immediate environment. This creates a warm microclimate around the bench, providing a comfortable, cozy zone where Bogdan and his dogs can sit and rest after a long day of physical labor. However, living deep in an undisturbed forest means sharing the environment with thousands of relentless predators, mosquitoes and biting flies. As the evening humidity rises, these insects swarm the clearing. To defend his homestead without modern chemical repellents, Bogdan manufactures primitive torches. By wrapping absorbent rags around stakes and saturating them with highly flammable, sticky pine resin, he creates a long-burning light source. The bright flames illuminate his yard, while the thick, resinous smoke acts as a powerful, completely natural insect deterrent, casting a protective barrier over his sanctuary. As the monumental project nears its absolute completion, Bogdan applies the final, most important layer to his homestead, living sod. He carefully harvests thick blankets of turf from a nearby clearing, complete with their intricate living root systems. He lays these tiles across the entirety of his earth-covered roof. Over the coming weeks, the grass roots will wake up, growing deep into the mud layer and weaving themselves into a tight structural mesh. This living network permanently locks the roof down, preventing heavy rains from eroding the mud and turning the roof into a green, self-healing, highly insulated shield. With this final layer of earth and grass in place, a profound transformation occurs. The cabin no longer looks like a harsh, artificial object forced upon the environment. The sharp lines of human architecture are softened by the living landscape. The homestead has effectively dissolved into its surroundings, blending seamlessly into the ancient forest as if it had grown right out of the soil over centuries. In this isolated, forgotten valley, there's no modern stream of digital interruption, no notifications, and no artificial anxieties. There's only the honest reality of physical work, the turning of the seasons, and the profound healing silence of the wild. Once just a temporary visitor passing through these woods, Bogdan has taken the raw, chaotic, scattered materials of the wilderness and bound them together with nothing but time, sweat, and ancient human ingenuity. Out here in the deep woods, there are absolutely no shortcuts to comfort. Every ounce of peace must be earned with your own two hands. And standing before his finished sanctuary, Bogdan has earned his own perfect place of absolute, unbroken peace.